So you probably have already seen my slideshow that walks you through breaking down the prompt. I define the word cite and I talk about how that means to um, give credit to the original author. We talked about several pieces of textual evidence, meaning more than two parts of whatever it is you just read, a short story, an article, a novel. We talked about how supporting analysis means that you back up what you think. Okay. We talked about how explicit means directly stated, and inferences means that you are um, using your background knowledge and clues within the text to come to your own conclusions. All right. So what I want to do is just show you what this looks like when someone does this, because that's what a standard is, a skill that you should be able to do. So this is something you should be able to do. So I want to show you what that looks like. And we're going to use The Outsiders. We just began reading this today, but it's pretty obvious just looking at the very first chapter that Ponyboy is smart. The author, S.E. Hinton, makes it very clear to us that Ponyboy is smart, all right? And she does that both explicitly and by showing us that he's smart, okay? And so if you are going to show your understanding of this standard, you're going to show that you have the skill to do this, all right? You would start with a claim. Ponyboy is smart. That's a claim. It's an opinion. It's an assumption. It's an inference. It's something you're claiming to be true. Okay, so Ponyboy is smart, and so you have your analysis. Ponyboy is smart. All right, and so to cite that, you could even say in The Outsiders. And we can italicize that so it looks like a title, right? In The Outsiders, Ponyboy is smart. We could say the main character of The Outsiders, Ponyboy, is smart. Something along those lines. So you're citing where that information came from, all right? Who's Ponyboy? He's from The Outsiders. And then we need to have all this evidence. We need to have several pieces of evidence. So we need to go through the story and we need to find both explicit evidence and places where we can make an inference to show that Ponyboy is smart. Okay, so I found this is at the very beginning of the book. I think it's like page 3, although don't quote me on that. I know it's in the beginning of the book. It's in chapter 1. And what we see here is Ponyboy is talking. He's sharing with us a little bit about who he is and what's happening in his life at this moment, right? So he's talking about how he wishes he had company, and he does like to watch movies by himself, but now that he's walking home, he wishes that someone was with him, right? He says, down here he's talking about his brothers, and he says, I'm not like them. I'm not like my brothers. I'm different than them, that sort of thing. He says, nobody in our gang digs movies and books the way I do. For a while, I thought I was the only person in the world that did. And so this part of the text really shows me that he's probably pretty smart. Because typically, and I know that you probably think I'm biased for saying this since I'm a reading teacher, but typically people who like to read books a lot are people who are pretty knowledgeable because they learn through reading. And so this shows me that he's pretty smart. Now, this is not direct. He does not say, the author, S.E. Hinton, she does not say Ponyboy is smart. She doesn't use the word smart. But she's showing us his desire for knowledge and his commitment to literacy. And so we're making assumptions that means he's pretty smart. Okay, so I would go in and I would type in that section of the text that quote, and I would place that here with the word inference, because it is an inference that I'm making about Ponyboy. I am inferring that he is smart based on that piece of evidence, right? Okay, so I have my quote here now. Notice that I put quotation marks around it, right? And this shows my inference that Ponyboy is smart. So I would then move on to another section of the text. I would look for more evidence that shows that Ponyboy is smart. So this paragraph says, I could have waited to go to the movies, they would have gone without me, or blah, 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 blah. Derry thinks his life is enough without inspecting other people's. Where is it here? Towards the bottom, I think. Here it is. Oh, I need you guys to see that. Okay. It says at the end, it drives my brother Derry nuts when I do stuff like that. And he's talking about not using his head, when I don't use my head, when I don't think first, when I don't use my brain. Okay? It drives my brother Derry nuts when I do stuff like that because I'm supposed to be smart. I make good grades and have a high IQ and everything, but I just don't use my head, which is like a normal thing for young kids, like young men and teenagers and adolescents. You know, you've got a lot going on. So he is smart. He's saying he's smart. He's supposed to be smart. He gets good grades. He has a high IQ. All of that is, and they even use the word smart here. Okay, so I would, I'm just going to copy this. I would count that as being explicit evidence, especially because the word smart was used. Okay, so going back to our chart, I would use the that quote as explicit evidence. Okay, so I have the quote over here, and I am going to continue looking for one more piece of evidence. And the reason I'm going to do that is because of this word several. I have now found one explicit and one inference that both show me that Ponyboy is smart. But since this says several, and I know that several is more than a couple, I'm going to look for a third one. A third time is a charm type of thing. All right. So there's one more paragraph, or two more paragraphs here that I wanted to show you. And this is Derry talking with Ponyboy, and he says, you don't ever think, not at home or anywhere where it counts. You must think at school with all those good grades you bring home, and you've always got your nose in a book. But do you ever use your head for common sense? No, sirree, bub. And if you did have to go by yourself, you should have carried a blade. I just stared down at the hole in the toe of my tennis shoe. Me and Derry just didn't dig each other. I could never please him. He would have hollered at me for carrying a blade if I had carried one. If I brought home B's, he wanted A's. And if I got A's, he wanted to make sure they stayed A's. And so this here kind of gives me just a little bit of insight into Derry. Derry obviously knows that Ponyboy is very capable, and he wants Ponyboy to be really successful in school so that he has a better future than maybe he has for himself. And so I can see that pressure here that Derry puts on Ponyboy, and he does not put that same pressure on Soda Pop. So that tells me that Ponyboy is probably smarter than Soda Pop, and he has good grades, and all that is reinforced again in this message. So I would take another quote from here and put that into my chart, and then I would probably call it a day. Okay, so I have the last quote in here. You must think at school, coming home with all those good grades. And so now I go back to my essential standard. Did I cite several pieces of textual evidence that support analysis of what the text says explicitly, as well as inferences drawn from the text? I think I did. I have 3 different pieces of information of quotes from the text that support my idea that Ponyboy is smart, my inference that I made. I state where the information comes from and the outsiders. And so I feel like I've done my job, and my job is complete. So now I'm going to leave you with this. When someone asks you, what is Essential Standard 7.4.1.1 asking you to do? What would you say?